In the very beginning, there was a special place. This place was called the Garden of Eden. It was a garden filled with great beauty and life. Colorful flowers bloomed everywhere you looked, painting the land with vibrant hues. Tall, strong trees grew in abundance, their branches heavy with juicy, ripe fruits ready to be eaten. Gentle streams of clear water flowed through the garden, making soft, soothing sounds. The air itself felt fresh and pure, carrying the sweet scent of blossoms and earth. It was a place of perfect peace and harmony, untouched by any sadness or trouble. God created the first two people in this wonderful garden. Their names were Adam and Eve. Adam was the first man and Eve was the first woman. They were made to live in Eden, to care for it, and to enjoy its many gifts. They had no worries and no fears in this perfect home. They could walk among the beautiful plants and friendly animals. Everything they needed was provided for them within the garden's lush boundaries. Their lives were simple and filled with an innocent kind of happiness, a direct connection to the world around them. Life for Adam and Eve in Eden was like an endless day of joy and discovery. They spent their time exploring the vast garden, finding new wonders each day. They could talk with the animals as all creatures lived in harmony. There were no predators and no prey. All coexisted peacefully. When they were tired, they rested under the shade of the leafy trees. When they were hungry, they ate the sweet fruits that grew all around them. Their days were filled with simple pleasures, laughter, and a deep sense of contentment, knowing only goodness. Among the countless trees in Eden, one tree was very special. This tree stood out from all the others. It was called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This tree was not like the other fruit trees. It held a particular significance, a boundary of sorts within their perfect world. God had placed it there, and it was a central point in the garden. Its fruit looked appealing, just like the fruit of other trees. But it represented something more than just food. It was a symbol of choice and understanding that Adam and Eve did not yet possess. God gave Adam and Eve everything they could ever need in the Garden of Eden. He also gave them complete freedom with just one single rule to follow. This rule was very clear and very important. God told them, "You may eat fruit from any tree in the garden." He then pointed to the special tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He said, "But you must not eat fruit from this particular tree." He warned them that if they ate its fruit, they would surely learn about things beyond their innocent understanding, and consequences would follow. One day a creature appeared in the garden. It was a serpent, often described as a sneaky and clever snake. This serpent was not like the other friendly animals Adam and Eve knew. It had a different kind of intelligence and a persuasive way of speaking. The serpent approached Eve when she was near the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It began to talk to her, its words smooth and inviting. The serpent wanted to plant a seed of doubt in Eve's mind about God's rule and his intentions towards them. The serpent started to question God's command. Did God really say, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden"? It asked slyly. Eve corrected the serpent, explaining God's rule about the specific tree. Then the serpent made a tempting suggestion. It told Eve that God did not want them to eat the fruit because it would make them wise. "If you eat this fruit," the serpent hissed, "your eyes will be opened. You will become like God, knowing the difference between good and evil." This promise of hidden knowledge and power was very enticing. Eve looked at the tree of knowledge. The fruit on its branches looked beautiful and delicious. The serpent's words echoed in her mind, the promise of becoming wise, of knowing more. The idea seemed so appealing, a chance to understand the world in a new way. She thought about it carefully. Finally, her curiosity and the desire for this special wisdom became too strong to resist. She reached out, picked a fruit from the forbidden tree, and took a bite. Then she went to Adam and gave him some of the fruit. Adam, listening to Eve, also chose to eat it. The very moment Adam and Eve tasted the forbidden fruit, something inside them changed profoundly. It was not the kind of change the serpent had promised in its entirety. Their eyes were indeed opened, but what they saw was not just new wisdom. They saw themselves and the world differently in a way that was startling and uncomfortable. They suddenly understood that they had disobeyed God's only command. This realization was immediate and heavy, bringing with it a feeling they had never known before in their perfect existence in the garden. For the very first time in their lives, Adam and Eve felt shame. They looked at themselves and felt exposed and vulnerable. They also experienced fear, another new and unsettling emotion. The innocence they had known was gone, replaced by a complicated awareness of their actions and their state. When they heard God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, they were afraid. They tried to hide themselves among the trees, hoping God would not see them or notice what they had done. Their relationship with the garden and with God had instantly shifted. God, of course, knew what Adam and Eve had done. He called out to Adam, asking why he was hiding. Adam admitted that he was afraid because he was naked. God then asked the crucial question, "Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" God was deeply saddened by their disobedience. He was not angry in a simple way, but rather sorrowful that they had chosen to break the bond of trust and ignore his loving guidance. Their choice brought a shadow over the perfect world he had created for them. As a direct consequence of their disobedience, Adam and Eve could no longer remain in the idyllic Garden of Eden. The perfection and innocence of the garden were not compatible with their new knowledge of good and evil and the shame that came with it. God told them they had to leave. With heavy hearts they walked out of the garden, and the gates of Eden were closed behind them, guarded to prevent their return. Their life of effortless joy was over, and a new, much harder life was about to begin in the world outside. The world outside the Garden of Eden was vastly different from the paradise Adam and Eve had known. It was a harsh, rugged, and untamed land. There were no readily available fruits on every tree, no gentle streams at every turn. Life was no longer easy. It demanded hard work and constant effort. They had to face challenges they had never imagined inside Eden's protective embrace. The sun could be scorching, the nights cold, and the earth sometimes unwilling to yield its bounty easily. They had to learn to adapt to this new, more difficult reality. Adam and Eve had to learn everything from scratch. They needed to figure out how to grow their own food from the soil, planting seeds and tending to crops. This required patience and understanding the seasons. They had to learn how to build shelters to protect themselves from the rain, the wind, and the wild animals. They learned to make clothes from animal skins to keep warm. Every day brought new tasks and new struggles, but also new opportunities to learn and to grow stronger in their new environment. They were pioneers in a challenging world. In this new world, Adam and Eve experienced the full spectrum of human life. They knew times of sorrow and hardship, but also moments of success and joy. They faced failures, but they also learned from their mistakes. They became parents, raising children who would in turn have their own families. Through them, humanity began to spread across the land, each generation facing its own trials and triumphs. They experienced birth, and eventually they would also experience death, a concept unknown to them in Eden. This was the fullness of life, with all its complexities. Through all their trials and tribulations outside of Eden, Adam and Eve discovered their own inner strength and resilience. They learned to face challenges head-on and grew from each experience. They learned to adapt to their surroundings and to rely on each other more deeply. Their love for each other and for their children deepened through shared struggles. They taught their children important lessons about life, about the importance of making choices, and about living with the consequences of those actions. Their story became a timeless tale about human nature, obedience, and the journey of learning and growth.